3-Eye Atlas has been haunting the creative capacity of scientists and stargazers alike for months. A mystifying visitor from another galaxy, glowing with an unnatural shade of emerald. It alters its trajectory unlike any asteroid or comet ever ought to. However, the mystery of the James Webb Space Telescope has now turned terrifying. Webb's powerful instruments didn't just capture the light of Atlas, they discovered a signal concealed within it. A recurrent sequence deeply embedded in the spectrum. At first it appeared to be noise, static carried by radiation from space. Yet when decoded, the patterns revealed something impossible. A well-organized code, not random, not from nature, but planned. A message implying that Atlas is more than an element. It sends information, transmitting a language we are only beginning to comprehend. It began when Webb trained its sensitive spectrographs on Atlas, dissecting its glow into wavelengths invisible to the human eye. What ought to have been a body's chemical fingerprint turned out to be full of oddities. Perfectly pulsed bands, certain regularity, and periodic repetition too precise to be random. Researchers at first dismissed them as instrument imperfections, but cross-checks with Earth-based observatories confirmed the same pattern. When the data was plotted, a startling image appeared to the eye, rising and falling sequences of frequencies that corresponded to spirals, lines and geometric shapes, ratios similar to the golden proportions found in mathematics and nature. This wasn't radiation. It was information encoded in the smallest details of Atlas. For the first time, astronomers weren't looking at a rock. They were reading a message carried across the stars. As efforts to decode grew more intense, researchers discovered the signal embedded in Atlas wasn't arbitrary. It relied on prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, and geometric ratios long theorized as constants across all fundamental elements of mathematics that any advanced intelligence would use to communicate. The implications were staggering. If Atlas were transmitting, employing this mathematical language, it was intended to be comprehended by anyone who could understand logic, and Webb had caught it. What disturbed scientists even more was that the code appeared to be stacked, like pages atop one another. At its simplest, it spelled out numbers in a series, but greater analysis revealed maps, star alignments, and even structures that looked like blueprints. Atlas wasn't simply speaking. It was imparting knowledge that appeared to grow more complex the deeper one looked. Humanity had long dreamed of contact with another intelligence. However, what Webb discovered in Atlas's light appeared less like a greeting and more like instructions. Not only did the patterns resonate with mathematics, but they also resonated with human history. Archaeologists brought in to consult were stunned to see that many of the hidden geometric shapes in the code matched symbols carved into ancient monuments. Spirals at Newgrange, circles in Mayan glyphs, and ratios etched into the stones of the Great Pyramid bore uncanny similarities to the sequences emerging from Atlas's signal. How could an interstellar visitor discovered just recently echo symbols thousands of years old? Some proposed coincidence. Others whispered about forgotten contact. Was it possible that Atlas, or something like it, had previously passed Earth, leaving behind code fragments that shaped our earliest societies? The more researchers compared, the more difficult it became to ignore the connection. The code wasn't just unfamiliar yet familiar. As if it had been woven into the fabric of human culture since the beginning, the code inside is growing more complicated by the day. As Atlas's signal unraveled further, so did the unease of those who studied it. Some of the message appeared to describe star systems. Others hinted at technologies surpassing human understanding. Then came the revelation that left everyone unsettled. Embedded deep within the signal was a repeating reference, a set of coordinates not in deep space but within our own solar system. When mapped, they pointed toward the moon. Theories had been floating around for decades concerning the moon's role as more than a passive body, but now Atlas itself seemed to be verifying it. Was the code directing us to look closer at our nearest neighbor? Was the moon part of this message, a recipient, or even a place to store what Atlas broadcast? Humanity, for the first time in history, faced the terrifying possibility that we weren't just decoding a signal. We were following a path left for us to follow. The deeper scientists dug into the message, the stranger things became. Research teams tested the code by running it through advanced computer simulations to determine whether the images or sequences transformed into models. But when they inputted the raw data, computers across multiple labs began to behave erratically. Software crashed, Systems rebooted, and in one alarming instance, an AI built to analyze large data sets began generating three-dimensional models on its own. Geometric structures resembling towers, lattices, and spirals that looked like blueprints for machines. Even more frightening, these machines appeared to have no discernible objective, as if they were small pieces of a larger puzzle. Engineers acknowledged that the computers weren't malfunctioning. They were following instructions buried in Atlas's signal. The conclusion was terrifying. The code was never intended to be observed. It was meant to be executed. When Webb's data was examined closely, analysts found something even more disturbing. Between the obvious pulses of prime numbers and spirals were hidden silences. These, at first dismissed as gaps, were revealed to contain faint echoes when amplified. When plotted, the echoes created mirrored patterns, precise star maps, constellations pointing beyond the immediate systems, and particular alignments within our solar system. One map emphasized Earth, another pointed toward Mars, but the most detailed one pointed toward the Moon. This suggested that Atlas did more than broadcast knowledge. It was sending coordinates, as if marking waypoints in a significantly greater journey. Humanity grew to dread that Atlas wasn't just transmitting data across space. It was leaving a breadcrumb trail, one that seemed to pass directly through our cosmic backyard. While researchers struggled with the technological implications, doctors and neurologists began reporting anomalies among those who had seen the decoded signal. Researchers who listened to the audio translations of Atlas's pulse described vivid dreams about glowing spirals and geometric visions flashing across their minds. EEG scans revealed atypical peaks in brain activity synchronized perfectly with the rhythm of the signal. Some mentioned heightened states of awareness, others crushing migraines, and, in rare cases, people began drawing complex geometric symbols they had never seen before, symbols that matched the code embedded in Atlas's light. It became clear that the message wasn't just intended for use by machines. It was made for biology. Humanity as a whole was beginning to resonate with the pulse despite our brain's extensive wiring, in order to distinguish this voice from the stars. As the pieces of the code fell into place, the most unsettling theory of all began to take shape. The message did not appear to be random nor purely informational. It seemed to carry instructions, maps, and triggers designed not only to be decoded, but to provoke action. Embedded within the layers of mathematics and geometry was a repeating phrase that defied translation, but carried unmistakable intent, a sequence that analysts described as an invitation. Whether it was an invitation to build, to follow, or to awaken something, since they were already here, nobody knew for sure. But one truth became undeniable. The code was not indifferent. It was a call sent across interstellar space, waiting for someone or something to respond. And now, thanks to the James Webb Telescope, humanity had taken on that role. When the signal's code was replicated in isolated computer systems for testing, researchers discovered something terrifying. Even after disconnecting the machines from power sources, some of them continued to emit faint electromagnetic pulses, as if the code itself had etched a mark on the hardware. In one instance, a lab's computers began synchronizing with each other, with screens flashing and generating binary streams in perfect unison. The engineers swore that no network connected them to one another. Yet the code had spread and copied itself like an organism with life. For the first time, humanity realized the signal was not just knowledge. It was self-sustaining, establishing itself wherever it could enter. And once it established itself, it refused to die. As the Webb telescope continued to study Atlas, astronomers observed an event that sent chills through the global community. Tiny arcs of emerald light stretched outward from the object, creating patterns throughout the night sky, visible to high-resolution instruments. When overlaid onto star charts, these arcs formed recognizable symbols, spirals, ellipses, and constellations that matched the same geometric codes the Webb had already decoded. But what startled scientists most was that these celestial patterns didn't just repeat mathematics. They aligned with ancient sacred sites on Earth. Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, and Teotihuacan all matched points in the sky lit by Atlas's arcs. It appeared as if the object was projecting a message both to the stars and to the ground beneath our feet, a cosmic inscription too vast to ignore. Up until now, the dialogue had seemed binary: Atlas broadcasting, humanity decoding. Nevertheless, evidence of something far stranger emerged. As researchers listened to the decoded layers, They detected faint distortions that didn't match Atlas's original pulse. These distortions were similar to echoes but arrived before the signal itself. When examined, the distortions revealed patterns that didn't belong to the source and weren't created by human interference. It was as though a third voice had joined the conversation, hidden between the pulses, contributing its own code. Some thought it was the moon resonating like a relay. Others feared it was something entirely different, something already here answering in a way we were still unable to decipher. Humanity had stumbled not onto a message but onto an ongoing conversation that had never truly stopped. Finally, as the code was dissected further, analysts discovered a sequence that defied every presumption. Instead of pointing outward to the stars, the final layers of the message pointed inward, toward the planet itself. Using advanced simulations, the sequences resolved into a map of Earth's magnetic field, including distortions that did not currently exist in scientific models. When researchers compared the patterns, they realized with horror that the distortions matched anomalies recently recorded in Earth's geomagnetic shield: subtle cracks, weaknesses, and shifting poles. Atlas had not just sent coordinates to Mars or the Moon. It had encoded an understanding of the planet's vulnerabilities, knowledge even humanity was only beginning to uncover. The code was not merely a message. It was a diagnosis, or possibly a warning written into the very structure of our world. As the signal reached laboratories and observatories, strange reports began to surface, not from machines but from people. Researchers who labored for long hours studying the decoded sequences began experiencing vivid dreams filled with pulsating geometric lines and spirals of green light. Some described voices speaking in tones they couldn't understand, while others woke with sketches they had drawn, identical to portions of the code they had memorized. Psychologists were perplexed, but neurologists noticed a troubling pattern. The brain activity of those affected showed synchronization with the same rhythms found in Atlas's signal. The code was no longer communicating through instruments alone. It was seeping into human consciousness, weaving itself into the architecture of dreams. The division between observation and possession became muddled, leaving humanity to wonder if simply studying the signal was enough to let it inside our minds. As this psychological wave spread, archaeologists were drawn back into the debate. They noticed that ancient monuments aligned with the stars thousands of years ago matched the geometric ratios buried in Atlas's code. But the most chilling revelation came when magnetic surveys of these sites detected faint, low-frequency pulses synchronized with the object's present signal. Stonehenge, the pyramids of Giza, and the temples of Teotihuacan appeared to resonate faintly, as if they were amplifiers not for human ceremonies but for a greater communication. It appeared as though these structures were not random cultural expressions. They were echoes of the same code etched into Earth long before the Webb telescope saw it in the stars. Humanity had always assumed it was the builder of these monuments, but what if we had only been following instructions encoded long ago? Scientists testing the code with strong transmitters discovered something unprecedented. When sections of the sequence were transmitted into controlled environments, physical anomalies appeared. Particles in cloud chambers formed spirals instead of random lines. Water bodies,